Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, EmeraldPlanet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the EmeraldPlanet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the EmeraldPlanet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States, looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for the 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. Also, there are a number of regional blocs that are very involved in looking at the future as we pave the way towards 2050. And one of those is the European Union and the European Commission. And we have a gentleman that's with us going to be talking about the investments in the environment, and the importance of this is Günter Hörmandinger, who is the Counselor for Environment. And I need to correct that. He is the first Counselor for Environment, I learned today, with the European Union delegation to the U.S. And Günter, welcome back.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. It's great being back here.
Well, we've had Günter with us before, and it's always a great pleasure to have you and representing the European Union. Tell us a little bit about the European Union and why does it have such a large delegation in the United States and Washington, D.C.?
All right. Well, the European Union, it's made up of 27 sovereign nations that came together to form something bigger than any one of them. They signed a treaty, the EU Treaty. In its latest iteration, it's called the Lisbon Treaty, and that forms the European Union, which is an entity not quite like a state, but with certain characteristics like a state. And one of those is it has foreign relations. So we have delegations, basically the embassies of the European Union all over the planet, and one of those is here in Washington, D.C. And that's obviously one of our more important places to have relations with, hence it's a sizable delegation.
Well, I think it's fantastic, and also you're representing the interest of the 27 nations, and I know that you have quite a task interacting with all these different embassies that you have. And so who are the decision-making bodies within the European Union itself?
Mm-hmm. Well, the European Union has a number of institutions that make sure that it's functioning. The three probably most important are the Council, which is where the ministers of the member states meet. The Parliament, that's where directly elected members of Parliament represent the citizens, and the European Commission. And the Commission is, if you consider the EU like a club of 27, the Commission is like the club secretary.
Oh, I tell you, that's incredible. But you look at it, it seems like it's very cumbersome and very intricate, but yet it's amazing how on the surface, it seems like that you're able to make decisions with that number of member states and move forward because you're very aggressive, proactive as far as the environment, economic development, and even civil society development.
I guess we're moving ahead because our citizens support that. You cannot do that without keeping your people on board. And the 27 countries have to come together. They've signed a treaty which is very strong on environmental issues. If you look up in the EU treaty, it says that we're supposed to make policy that leads to a high level of environmental protection. So that informs the policy making in the EU.
And I think it's incredible that you're able to have buy-in from the number of citizens that you have across 27 member states, because it's such a mix of nations, large and small. Many of them that came out of the CIS and joined late with the European Union. Then you have the anchors like Germany, France, other large member states. So how do you go about making sure that you keep consensus among the population and keep them informed of what really is the decisions being made for the EU?
Well, the procedure is pretty well defined under the treaty. So the only institution that can make a proposal for new legislation is the European Commission. So that's one of the sources of its power. It has the monopoly of making proposals. It's not like over here where any member of Congress can table a bill. Only the Commission can make a proposal. But of course it doesn't do so out of the blue. It will consult widely and make sure that whatever it proposes is then acceptable to the other two institutions, the Council and the Parliament, because they will have to make a joint decision called co-decision procedure. So that's the procedure which usually takes a year to 2 years to agree on a piece of legislation, which is then European law.
Yeah, and looking at it, so when you're looking at sustainable development, the environment, that is really the same process you're going to go through regardless of the issues that's being faced by the European Union then.
Absolutely, and it's not the first time. We started back in 1973 with the first Environment Action Program, which is an overarching strategic plan to make sure that all the different environmental actions in so many fields that we do, air, water, chemicals, you name it, that all that leads up to a coherent policy overall. So we had 6 environmental action programs so far. The last ended in the end of 2012, and we're busy preparing for the 7th one. So that's been proposed last year by the European Commission, and now it's before the Council and the Parliament, and they are in the process to make it happen, to make it law.
So if you look at 40 years, that's a long history, and that's a significant amount of time to really get into the decision-making process and make sure that everything really works smoothly, and you're keeping everybody involved with you as you're moving forward then.
Absolutely. I wouldn't pretend that it's easy, obviously, but I think it is actually amazing how far we've come, and I think that reflects the fact that people realize that what we're doing really brings the whole place forward and raises our quality of life in multiple ways.
And I think with sustainable development, this is one of the things that I think that you really do communicate on a regular basis to the people throughout the 27 nations, is that this balance between the environment and the economy and civil society is very important to the future of the continent and all the countries involved.
Indeed, that's being communicated, and people get the message. This is publicly quite supported by the population.
Now, looking at, there's a plan that you're getting ready to implement. It's called the Environment Action Program. Sounds very sophisticated. So what is part of the Environment Action Program?
Well, actually, when you look at the shape of the Environment Action Program, it's a piece of legislation, but it contains some very short articles which basically commit the EU to work on that program. There's a long annex which describes it in more detail. So it is legally binding text, and it's based on 9 priorities, in fact. 3 of those, I would say, are headline priorities. And those are the ones where we think, those encapsulate what we need to do in order to make our development sustainable. And the title of the whole thing is Living Well Within the Limits of Our Planet. And that's a double message that's very important, I think. On the one hand, it acknowledges that our planet has limits. And in some cases, we've reached those, or maybe even transgressed those. But the other message is we believe we can live well within those limits if we do it right. And that's the program is about how to achieve that.
Well, I think this is something that's very important. I know that the populations are expanding in Europe from immigration, some internal growth as far as the population is concerned. But as we add 2 billion new souls to the planet, and Europe's going to be very much involved in that, either providing goods and services and food for those areas, but at the same time is we want them to live well. So it seems like even in the nomenclature, the language of this document, that actually you're preparing to live well as we move through the 21st century and not just existing.
Absolutely. And I think it's a very positive message. The signs are we can do this. The resources are there to live well, for everybody to live well, but we mustn't squander our endowment. And we must do it right. We must do it in a smart way, and we must find ways of avoiding all those unintended side effects that are environmental pollution.
Yeah, now looking at the 9 elements, principles as far as the action program, are there any 3 or 4 that you would like to share with us that would highlight the essence of this and how you plan to move forward towards 2050 and the end of the century?
I think the essence, that's the first 3. And those are the 3 clusters, or the 3 distinct ideas that will guide our thinking. The first is to protect nature and ecosystems, to make ecosystems resilient, because after all, humanity lives within nature, and we can only live if nature lives. So that's the first thing. The second is to have a sustainable and resource-efficient economy and a low-carbon economy. So that's the economic part. How do we develop? How do we produce, live well, produce goods, produce services, but in a way that stays within the limits. And the third one is about health and the environment. In other words, how do environmental problems impact on our health? Air quality, water quality, chemicals, and so on. Those 3 topic areas, nature, the economy, and health, that's the core of those objectives.
And really, if you look at it as the low carbon and looking at protection of nature and then the health, those all really fit together very nicely as a package as far as moving forward and really protecting not only just the health, but also the mental well-being and the physical well-being of citizens throughout the European Union. How do you see that bridging over into other nations? Because, you know, the EU in many ways is being a world-class example of best practices and how the world can collaborate to do these very same things.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what we can do, or that's one of the things we can do, to give an example, to show others that you can have a high quality of life and a high standard of living, and at the same time live within your means. At the same time, we engage in international procedures and processes and policymaking arenas to make sure that such ideas also get spread around the globe.
Yeah, well, looking at it, the main objectives and looking as we move towards 2050 and living within your means, how do you define that, and how do you want the citizens to be able to interpret that so that they really are enhancing, expanding their quality of life, but yet are not, you know, just wasting and squandering the resources that we have? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we need to be realistic. Nobody knows what the year 2050 will really look like. But what we've come up with already 2 years ago were a number of roadmaps, a number of scenarios that map out how you could get to the year 2050. We had a roadmap, for example, on a low carbon economy, where the carbon emissions, the CO2 emissions of the EU would drop by 80%. Compared to the year.
That's incredible, 80%.
80%, and the really incredible thing is that it can be done. Mm-hmm. It can be done without assuming any wonder technologies in the future, but with the knowledge we have today, we believe we can do that. That's the low carbon economy. We've done that for the transportation sector, we've done that for the energy sector, we've got also roadmaps on things such as biodiversity. So we have an idea how to go to the year 2050, and that's not meant to depict what the year 2050 will really look like, it's more to inform us at this stage, which way should we go now?
Well, I think what you're doing, you're really setting a roadmap, and I like the term that you're using, roadmap, because as you move forward through this, you're not trying to pick winners now, and you're allowing this to evolve. So just like nature is organic and human life is organic, you're allowing this process to be organic, which means that it can accommodate the change that will definitely happen as we move forward.
Yeah, I think the way in which this happens organically at the EU level will be, of course, that once we have this new framework environmental action program in place, which is currently being negotiated, this will lead to more legislation or to adapted legislation that translates it into the EU law to the best of our knowledge at the time the law is being written, and obviously this will be revisited.
Well, thank you for being with us. This is Günter Hörmandinger, who is the first counselor for Environment, European Union Delegation to the U.S. And I must say you're doing an excellent job as far as representing the interests of the EU and the United States. And I think there's much we can learn as Americans from this. Thank you for being with us.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up. Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it!
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
Didn't cross roll. He's back. Yes. Go, Doc, go.
Welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for the 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the processes, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And also we have major trading and international development blocks that have been created since World War II. And these are very much involved in coordinating and working with various member states, such as the European Union, with 27 nations that are part of the European Union and the European Commission. And so as they focus on the environment as we move through 2050, what are some of the policies, but also the procedures and the people that are going to make a difference as we move to the end of the 21st century? We have Dr. Georg Maue, who is the first Secretary for Climate and Energy Policy, the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany. And Georg, welcome.
Hi, Sam. Thank you very much for inviting me and having me here. I'm very happy to discuss a few items with you on energy.
Well, I tell you, I think it's absolutely fantastic what you're doing, and the German embassy has always had a major and positive impact in Washington, D.C. as around the globe, and we really welcome you. This is your first time you've been with us. Yeah. And as we continue to expand on the European Union, European Commission, we're going to make sure you come back in the future. But I know that you really are working on a very complex program as you move forward through 2050 for Germany as part of the European Union. And there's some basic reasons that you're now actually transitioning away from fossil fuels, nuclear energy, more into renewables. What are some of these basic principles and reasons that you're making this a very dramatic transformation?
Right, Sam. So the German Energiewende, that's the transition of the energy system, is planned until 2050. And there are actually three very good reasons for Germany to transform its energy system. First of all, energy is key, particularly for a country like Germany, who is an industrial country. And the three very good reasons I would like to explain to you for Germany to transform its energy system is, first of all, it's needed. So our current energy supply is not sustainable. Not sustainable. That means,
and I think this is something, Georg, that many people don't realize the importance and the size of Germany. You think it has all these abundant resources,
right.
But like many other countries, you're really dependent on the globe in order to bring about the energy needs that you have and the other things that you're doing as a nation.
Exactly. So at the moment we are importing 70% of our energy. So one goal is to produce more energy in our own country. And that's possible with renewables. Actually, the potential for renewables, which we have in Germany, is enough to energize the whole country. And the third good reason, I would like to elaborate more on that later, is it's beneficial. It's beneficial actually to transform our energy system of today.
Well, I know Germany really is one of the leading economies as far as the European Union is concerned, but also the world economy is very important. And so by having this leadership as far as what you're doing from the energy and also reducing the amount of imports that you need, which reduces the amount of loading for the rest of the planet, really is very forward thinking.
Right. So actually we have a very ambitious targets to implement that energy transition. And the targets are mostly driven from the necessity to combat climate change. Actually, until the midst of the century, we need to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by 50%. And Germany has a target to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 80 to 95%.
So you're really going much better. Even though the target is 50%, you believe that you can go almost a third beyond that.
Well, actually, Germany is an industrial country, and it has contributed to the greenhouse gas emission in the past. And that's why we think we start from a higher level. So we should reduce 80 to 95%.
Well, I know this is some of the criticism, if you will, or feedback from the developing nations, saying industrialized nations like Germany, United States, UK, France, Japan have enjoyed the benefits of a very industrialized society the last 150 years. Now it's our turn to do that, and of course we want our citizens to continue to have a higher quality of life. So how do you think you can do that balance so that you continue to grow the economy, but at the same time you're going to protect the environment?
Right. We have identified three main areas where we have to work on. The first one is to increase the renewable energy use. So we have potential for renewable energy in Germany. The second is to be more efficient in industry, but also in the building sector and in the transport sector. And the third one is we have to work on our grid system, on the infrastructure. Actually, you can compare a very modern energy system with a modern computer. So it has to be very powerful, it has to be efficient, and the different parts have to work together. That's like our energy system.
And the whole thing is to use the least amount of energy as possible. And we have this chart here. Would you like to share more about this, Georg, as far as what this means and how this really translate this policy to the world as far as where Germany is coming from?
Right. One major driver of our targets, this chart is showing the targets for Germany until 2050 and in the intermediate schedule. And actually, we are focusing on the greenhouse gas emissions. I told you that we have to reduce them, and we are well on track. Right now, we have 27% less emissions than compared to 1990. And the target for 2020 is 40%. In order to do that, we have to change the energy resources we are using. So renewable energies are the answer. And the target for renewable energies is at least 80% in the power sector alone. Today we have 25%. We came from almost nothing. And the third very important part is efficiency. In order to achieve these targets, the other two targets, we have to increase our efficiency. And our target is 50% increase in energy efficiency until 2050. That means doing the same things, but using less energy.
Yeah, and then also looking at it too, I would assume in that energy conservation is part of this efficiency that you're talking about. But
Right.
really, there are two different things. One is having motors and using nanotechnology, so you're just absolutely using far less energy and removing demand off the grid. But at the same time is that in our homes and our automobiles and all that, to conserve and use far less. So in looking at the broad policy that you have as a very sophisticated manufacturing and industrial society as Germany, how do you balance that where people feel like they're really part of the conservation part and that industry and research institutes, universities are contributing on the other side as far as the efficiency factor?
Well, the policy offers a lot of chances for different parts of society. First of all, we're creating new jobs. Until now, we have 390,000 new jobs only in the renewable sector. And today in Germany, the environmental sector, if you call that a sector, offers more jobs than our automobile industry already. So it's a giant job machine on the first hand. The second one is people can contribute to the energy production. So nowadays we have more than 1 million people producing electricity from their rooftops, or they're owning in their community, they're owning the windmills. So there are lots of chances for those people.
Well, I think it's absolutely fantastic what you're doing. And again, this is this balance between the government, business, and the citizens within the community. So looking at this transition from coal, from nuclear, the fossil fuels that you have, how do you feel that Germany is going to continue to move forward and meet these efficiency targets and not only contribute to Germany, but also the EU itself?
Well, actually, the target until 2050 is in the whole EU, that is 80 to 95%.
So that really covers all the European Union.
That covers the whole Union. And of course, each country has individual programs and measures in order to achieve that. And actually in Germany, people are in favor of doing that. So if you ask around, people are in favor of climate change. And they are in favor of that energy transition towards a more cleaner and a more sustainable energy.
Well, looking at the United States, but many countries, they have what's called a feed-in tariff, or there's a discussion about the feed-in tariff, and then also about carbon credits, and then having a carbon trading system. What is Germany doing in this whole effort to help itself, but also maybe, again, as an example to other countries around the globe.
Right. You mentioned the feed-in tariff. That's the strongest instrument from Germany. Actually, the feed-in tariff guarantees everyone who produces renewable electricity fixed tariff. So you get for each kilowatt hour you're selling to the grid, you get your money for 20 years. And this has attracted a lot of people producing their own energy. As I told you, more than 1 million people are using solar-powered panels on their rooftops, or they're having their windmills in the community. That is a success story, actually. That is called the feed-in tariff, part of our Renewable Energy Act.
Now, looking at that, I know this has been very positive for Germany, but yet, when you were getting this, many people say it's not going to work, it's going to be way too expensive, it's going to be a burden on business. How did you prove to people that this is actually is a way to work, and at the same time, you keep expanding the job base? So there's many things going right with this particular system that you've developed.
Correct. Actually, when we were developing this program, besides the naysayers, there also were some concerns in the country. Would the capacity be enough for Germany to power the whole country? And actually, the shutdown of 8 nuclear power plants could be compensated by reserves and by more new renewables. And actually, we didn't have a power shortage or a blackout so far. That's a good thing. At the same time, the spot market price for electricity dropped by 20%. And today we are exporting more electricity than ever. So actually the negative prediction did not come true so far.
Yeah, well, you have this particular program here, and I'm going to let you share that with our audience as far as this energy transition program. And it seems like it's really on track, or maybe even moving ahead of schedule. Tell us a little bit about this energy transition, the program itself, and what best lessons can we learn from that? And we only have about 1 minute to do this in.
Yeah, okay, so 1 minute for the energy transition. Actually, the headline is policy matters, because you have to work on it in different areas. As I told you, not only building up the renewables, you have to put them into the grid. So you have to work on the infrastructure and efficiency. And actually, we have the support from the society. That's the good thing. And we are good on track with regard to renewables. So we have now 25% renewables in the electricity sector, and that's on track for our 35% goal until 2020.
Well, we have about 15 seconds left. What would you like to share with our domestic and international audience as a final statement from Germany?
Well, I think renewables offer really big opportunities and chances for everybody, and it's worthwhile to look at that.
Yeah, well, I think this is one of the things that Germany is definitely proving, is that you can grow the economy because you've been doing that. You can strengthen the economy because with the world economic malaise, you've actually shown that you can do that. But at the same time, you can generate a tremendous number of green jobs through the investment that you're making. And I think this is a commitment that not only the government, but the citizens of Germany have made. And it's something that is an example for the world. So thank you for being with us. We look around the globe. Great.
There's more than just books at the library.
There's more than just books at the library.
Excuse me. There's more than just books at the library.
Il n'y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
Hello. You have a lot of great books here today. You know there's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
I don't want to be hooked to a machine.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in writing.
Documenting my wishes today means my family won't have to make heart-wrenching decisions later.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you are a runaway, thinking about running away from home, or a parent or guardian concerned about issues facing your child, call us 24 hours a day. 1-800-RUNAWAY. In times of crisis, hope is just a phone call away. 1-800.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States. As we look around the globe as we move towards 9 billion souls on the planet by 2050. And so what we're looking at is not only at nation states and how they're addressing this issue of their ever-expanding population base, but also major regional blocs such as the European Union that is taking a very proactive stance as far as balancing the economy, at the same time caring for and actually enhancing the quality of the environment and giving quality to the civil society within the 27 nation states of the European Union. And so we have a gentleman that's been with us a number of times. This is Hans Kordik, who is a Council for Agriculture and Environment from the Embassy of Austria in Washington, D.C. And Hans, welcome back.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's always a pleasure and honor to be here.
Well, we're always glad to have you. And I know we're going to start with this slide here because we always do when you come on about Austria as the green heart of Europe, even though we have you now outlined in red in this particular program. But tell us, what are some of the specific challenges and situations that are going on with Austria as you move further along on sustainable development?
Well, Austria lies in the middle of Europe. We have 8 neighboring countries to the north: Germany, Czech Republic, East Slovak Republic, Hungary, South Slovenia and Italy, and to the west Switzerland and Liechtenstein. Having 8 neighboring countries also bears challenges. Austria is a transit country, transit north-south, also east-west. That's one challenge. Another challenge that we have is our topography. 70% of our country is covered with mountains, which bears a challenge, especially for the agricultural sector. We have very small structured, small-scale companies, which make a big challenge for Austria. And last but not least, I'm missing. Anyway, the reason why we have chosen sustainable development is to fight these challenges. We see in sustainable development a chance to create new economic opportunities and preserve the environment.
Well, I know that you've done an excellent job as a nation. Austria is one of the strongest economies in the European Union and actually in the world. There's a good balance between the quality of life, economic expansion, and the environment. So there's a lot of things that's going well with this focus on sustainable development. How do you come as a nation state like that and then bring the people with you to say that we need to have this balance between the economy, environment, and allowing a higher, even higher quality of life for all the citizens?
Well, we know since the Earth Summit in 1992, that's when the definition of sustainable development received global recognition based on the definition of the Brundtland Report from the Norwegian Prime Minister Harlem Gro Brundtland from the Brundtland Report 1987. And in Austria, our sustainable development definition is based on that, but we see the necessity in sustainable development to maintain all 3 pillars of sustainable development in balance: economic sustainability, ecologic sustainability, and social sustainability.
And let's bring this up so we can see this, because this is really a very simple but yet profound diagram of what you're talking about, Hans, as far as these three pillars of the sustainable development. And looking at this, Austria is a small country. As you said, it's surrounded by many nation states that you interacted with in various ways over the centuries. But what makes your strategy different for sustainable development in, say, many other countries besides just your geographical location?
Well, we have different aspects that we try to follow. First of all, it's all about quality of life. Austrians enjoy a high quality of life, and therefore stressing on sustainable development makes it possible for present generations and as well for future generations. Second of all, sustainable development provides new business opportunities. It's a motor for innovations and creates jobs. But third, it's also about responsibility. Austria has tremendous resources. Water is one of those resources which makes Austria special on the world. And it's necessary when you have water in abundance, but also in high quality, to preserve this quality also for the future. And sustainable development is the key policy to make that possible.
Well, we have this photograph here, and I was over in Austria. It's an absolutely gorgeous country. And one of the things I found when I was going out and meeting with the Chambers of Commerce, the Rotary Clubs, various other societal groups within the various communities, they really do buy into this, and they really support the government and what it's doing, and the European Union is emphasis on sustainable, but also the quality of the environment. So was it a long process, or is this something that's just innate to the very character of the Austrian people, that they have this love of nature as well as they want to have a good high quality standard of living?
Well, I think the first graph, as we see here, which is the development of forestry in Austria, illustrates a very good example, as sustainable development has taken place in Austria in the forest management dating back to 1868. That means already in the 19th century, when a law was initiated in Austria stating that for every tree being logged, another tree has to be planted. And that also making it's a perfect implementation of the 1992 definition of sustainability, making use of the needs of the present generation without compromising the needs of future generations. But another example where we have implemented sustainable development is agriculture. I mentioned the challenges that we have, that 70% of our country is covered with mountains. We also have climatic challenges, climates coming in from the Mediterranean continental climate and also from the east, the Pannonian climate, which makes agriculture very challenging. We have focused on environmental friendly types of agriculture. We have the highest share of organic farms in Europe. 16% of our farms practice organic farming.
Well, I think that's absolutely fantastic. And looking at going back to the quality of the water, this is the one thing when you travel around Austria, it's absolutely green everywhere. And then, of course, you have some of the glaciers, which adds to the richest nature of the environment that you have there. But at the same time is that by having these old standards going back to the 1800s, actually that's aided as we move through the 21st century, quality of the water, of the air, and the soil. So what kind of policies are you implementing now with the European Union to move forward to 2050 that actually is going to continue to enhance this quality of air, soil, and water?
Well, I think our colleague from the EU delegation has mentioned one of the focuses of the EU is to reduce carbon emissions on the one hand, on the other hand, increase the share of renewable energy. It's called the 20-20-20 package, meaning to reduce emissions by 20%, increase the share of renewable energy by 20% up to the year 2020. For Austria, our goal, based on our traditions and also our GDP is to increase the share of renewable energy by 34%. And today we have already a share of 31%, and we'll be easy on target to reach the 34% by 2020.
I know when I visited the state of Carinthia, and they're now, I think their claim is they're about 43%. So you have these states around the country that actually even trying to go beyond definitely what the EU is doing, but even beyond what the targets are as far as Austria is concerned.
Well, I think important to say about Austrian energy policy is that it's based on two pillars. On the one hand, promoting of renewable energy. On the other hand, to promote measures in energy efficiency. And I think both together have been able to give us those figures that we have. And one important thing to mention about Austria is we have no nuclear power, as nuclear power is not considered a sustainable energy form.
I think that's really unique in the world body is concerned as far as no nuclear whatsoever. And also that really goes to it. But looking at the renewable energy policies and the sources, what are some of the sources of the renewables that you're invoking and actually you're expanding at this time?
Well, the primary source within the renewables is biomass, which makes up more than 50% of our renewable energy mix.
Now, what is biomass? We hear this term all the time, but many people saying, well, what is biomass?
Unlike the United States, where biomass is primarily corn for ethanol, in Austria, it's wood. We use wood. We have, we saw on the graph before, growing share of forest land in Austria, and we use this resource. We have a strong wood industry, and the side product of the wood industry is used to create energy. We have a strong paper industry. The side product of the paper industry is used for energy. So this is a fantastic idea to use wood, as wood is the only resource that creates heat, that creates electricity, and that can be used for fuel.
Well, I know that this is absolutely fantastic, this balance you have, and we're, as usual, we're running out of time. So looking at this, the sustainable development and the economic impacts. Let's go out with this.
Well, Austria, I need to mention generally, Austria per capita is seen as the 10th wealthiest country of the world. Within the European Union, Austria has the lowest unemployment rate. And in the last 10 years, our exports have doubled. This is a general fact. Now, in terms of environmental sustainability, 1 out of 20 jobs in Austria created is a so-called green job. We have 210,000 green jobs created through our environmental sustainability, but also the share of our GDP deriving from sustainability is already just above 11%. And as you can see from the graph, both the share of jobs as well as the share of environmental technologies based on our GDP is continuously growing.
I think it's absolutely fantastic. We have about 15 seconds. What would you like to share with our domestic and international audience about sustainable development, the future for Austria?
I think sustainable development is not a choice but an obligation. You have mentioned at the beginning the challenges awaiting us, the growing population, growing food, growing energy demands. Sustainable development is the right answer.
Osama bin Laden calls getting nuclear weapons a religious duty.
Today, materials that can be used to make nuclear weapons are stored in more than 40 countries.
Sometimes protected by just a chain-link fence.
Yet not enough is being done to lock down these materials
before terrorists steal them.
Why did we learn all this?
My mother,
my son,
my sister-in-law
were all murdered September 11th.
Help protect America.
Together we can.
Please join us.
The stem cell issue is being debated throughout the country. Truth is, most everyone has an opinion, even if they don't know the facts.
Let's stop arguing and start really understanding the potential of stem cell research.
For us and for millions of Americans living with disabilities, get the facts.
Call 1-877-842-3442 for free information from the Stem Cell Research Foundation. That's 1-877-842-3442.
Following the tragic events of September 11th, there have been hundreds of violent attacks against innocent Americans.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
Remember, please stop the hate.
We're stronger
when we are united.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
One nation under God,
Indivisible.
With liberty
and justice
for all.
In America, there's either room for everyone, or it's not America.
Don't pick the wrong fight.
Let's keep America land of the free.
Stop the hate.
Planning a home renovation? Put this at the top of your to-do list. Because after 10 years, none of you are protected against tetanus and another potentially fatal disease, diphtheria. A minor injury, such as a cut or a scrape, can put you at risk for a tetanus infection. And while safety gear offers some protection, an up-to-date vaccination called the TD booster is the best insurance against tetanus. So get the TD booster. If it's been 10, do it again.
Hello and welcome back to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, the Emerald Planet TV. We're looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for the 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the processes, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And we also have a number of regional blocks that we deal with. One of those is the European Union, and we have an outstanding panel that's going to be sharing with us as far as what is actually going on in the European Union and how that relates to sustainable development. And we have, I've got a huge list here, but we have Günter Hörmandinger, who is the counselor for the environment. He is the first counselor, I should say, European Union delegation to the United States. Dr. Georg Maue, who is the first secretary of climate and environment with the Federal Republic of the German Embassy here. Yeah. And then our good friend who's been with us a number of times, Hans Kordik, who is a counselor for agriculture and the environment at the Embassy of Austria. So we have three outstanding individuals that can represent very well the European Commission. Günter, and thank you for being back with us.
It's great being here.
Looking at it, and we're going to come up with a couple of slides here as far as we're going to share. Let's move up here just a minute. And this is for the European Commission. And looking at the European Commission, I know that there's a real focus, and we've been talking about that as far as sustainable development. But what do you see? What is the real benefits, the economic benefits from being concerned about and involved with the environment itself?
I think the economic benefit is twofold. It shows itself in the area of economics for firms, for businesses that are active in the field that create a lot of jobs. We're heading for more than 3 million jobs in the green business field in the year 2020. And the other is in people's personal lives and in their health and in the systems that support that, all the way to health care systems that spend less money. So overall, it's a win-win proposition that also brings real benefits for people in their quality of life.
Well, I think that it's really an example of what you're doing as far as European community is concerned, because each time we put on one of these television programs, it's amazing how people volunteer, they want to be involved in this and work with you. I think that's, Günter, a real comment on your leadership as far as here in the United States. And Georg, what are some of the biggest potentials for energy savings and efficiencies as far as what's going on in Germany today, and what do you see for the future of that?
Well, one very important sector definitely is the building sector. At the moment, we are spending almost 40% of our energy on the management of buildings, for heating, for cooling, and 30% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from that sector. So it's worthwhile to do something with it. And actually, if you look at new houses, it's possible with today's technology to have them more or less energy neutral. They even can produce energy. You know, you're using the solar panels on the rooftop, you're using the geothermal from the earth, and together with that and a very good insulation, you almost need no energy anymore for buildings. That's the future. And of course, we have to build on the existing buildings, and the reduction potential for energy efficiency is 80%, so we can save 80% of the used energy with the same result.
Well, I think this is a great diagram here, and this is something that's really emphasized in many countries around the globe. But I want to go back, and before we move over to Hans and talk about what he's doing in Austria, is really this whole thing of actually having a house where it's actually generating power. This is a new concept, although it's been around for a long time. So how is Germany really enhancing this? I know you had a real focus on solar and wind. So how is this actually playing out in Germany today, and how are your homeowners feeling and participating in this particular type of program?
Right. One thing is technology. The technology is there already. The second thing is you need a policy. So we have standards for new houses, and from the year 2020, all the new houses have to fulfill more or less that passive house standard. So that is quite an extraordinary step towards that energy efficiency in buildings. Second, much more difficult is to work with the existing buildings, because people want to manage their investments in buildings by themselves. So we have to take more time for renovating those buildings.
Yeah, well, going to Hans. Hans has been on and talked about all the things that are going on in Austria, but I know that every time we talk, you just keep doing things better and you keep expanding your programs. So looking at this map we have here, some of the new mix of technologies and products and processes that you're using in Austria to do the very things we're talking about in the EU and Germany as far as energy efficiency, but also expanding on the production of energy.
Well, our goal is, like many industrialized countries, to become energy independent. And we have realized that skyscrapers are not built from the top, but from the bottom up. Therefore, we see that this grassroots strategy is the way to go. And the map illustrates the different levels of energy independence throughout Austria, meaning there are regions in Austria which are already today 100% energy independent, based to 100% renewable energy, and have created many jobs doing so, as well as new companies.
Well, I tell you, it's just fantastic what you're doing. And Günter, we were kind of chatting about this before we actually started the program, that you get the real hard question in all this. But about this interplay between the European Union and the United States, I mean, there's really a lot of things that you can teach us here in the United States and North America about energy efficiency and energy conservation, but also enhancing the environment. How do you see this interplay in with the big office that you have here, that you can actually share with us just the same that we want to be able to share with you and the European Union?
Yeah, I don't think we're into teaching, but specifically on the
We said sharing. I didn't say teaching, sharing.
Specifically on the EU-US relationship, you've got to be aware that this is the largest commercial relationship on the planet by far. The largest mutual direct investment, by far the largest trade volume. And we're going to enhance it further. There will be a transatlantic trade and investment partnership that will open up the markets even more. So there's a lot of exchange coming our way. It won't be without challenge on the sustainable side. The United States currently finds a lot of cheap fossil energy, natural gas and also oil through hydraulic fracturing, and that will make it more difficult, not easier, for new sources of energy. But at the same time, we're facing the same pressures in all of those interconnected environmental issues. And a mutually integrated economic space is a good place to start to spread those ideas.
Well, I know one thing too, if I can just expand on the question, Günter, if you don't mind, as far as green jobs, this is one of the things, the debate is, if you move towards green jobs, you're going to slow down job creation. It really doesn't aid and enhance. But what we've heard from Austria and Germany, and now from the European Union, actually focusing on green jobs actually expands the job base and brings even higher level of pay and greater taxes for local governments.
Well, it seems to work for us, and that's a good thing, and we certainly pursue it further. And I think that's something, that we show to the rest of the world, who can take note of it if they want to.
Yeah, well, we're glad you're here and you're sharing with that. And as you know, this is all about best practices that we have on the Emerald Planet. So being the good news guys, we want to continue this. But Georg, looking at the benefits to the economies, the environment, and civil society, as far as moving away from fossil fuels of all kinds, and even your country's moving away at a very rapid rate from nuclear.
Right.
And so in moving towards renewables, how is this really enhancing your economy, which is actually one of the strongest on the planet?
Right. Well, actually, there are several chances. I mean, we are creating new business. We have 390,000 new jobs only in the renewable sector, as I said before. And of course, if you look at the traditional business, like the steel industry or the cement industry, they are profiting, they are benefiting from that program as well, because they're selling a lot of their materials, and the chemical industry selling a lot of their materials to the new renewable energy production. You know, so it's beneficial for the new and the traditional sectors. That's one thing, and of course it's beneficial for the environment. We're already reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. That's in the order of 130 million tons less emissions last year, only by the use of renewables. So there are lots of benefits coming from that.
Well, we're looking at this as far as green jobs, and really kind of new businesses, new industries are coming on, the nanotechnologies, telecommunications, and all that. But you listed two very old, what you think, smokestack industry, cement and steel, as being part of this mix, and have more energy conservation, but yet being more productive. How is Germany doing that?
Well, actually, the sector is developing almost by its own. But of course, I mentioned a very important stimulus instrument, which is the feed-in tariff. And that, of course, created an atmosphere for that business. That was very important. And of course, efficiency, we always talk about the low-hanging fruit, but people ask, why don't everybody pick them, you know? The answer clearly is some people simply don't know. So it's very good to have a management energy system. And that is introduced in Germany as well.
Well, Hans, coming from Austria, there's a number of examples that you have as far as what's going on in your country as far as the renewables, looking at green jobs creation. You have a very strong economy. How are you balancing all this together?
Well, I mentioned our grassroots strategy before, and I think one of our flagship models is the region of Güssing, which lies on the border to the former Iron Curtain. It used to be one of the poorest regions, with 70% of workforce commuting to other regions. Within 10 years, they managed to move from an energy importer to being 100% energy independent based on renewable energy. They created 50 new companies. They created 1,100 new green jobs, and the annual turnover plus is $28 million from renewable energy.
That's incredible. And as being the last member of the here and the head of the delegation for this evening, Günter, we'll let you share with us. We only have about 15, 20 seconds. What do you want to share with us?
Well, I think we're hitting the limits of the planet. We've seen that. That's not the question. The question is, are we going to do something about it actively, or do we just let it happen? And I think we should do something actively so that we can live well within those limits.
Well, I think this is something that's very important, and I tell you, you three gentlemen have done an outstanding job here. So Hans, thank you again for putting this together. Thank you, Günter, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Pleasure.
Hans,
thank you again
for being with us. And it's just exciting what's going on